We are here today with Joe Jacobi. Joe is the Olympic gold medalist, and he is the creator of 5 with Joe Performance Coaching. And I am so grateful to have you here. Joe, let's just jump in real quick. Joe, tell me something. If our viewers were going to ask you what they could do or what you could show them on how to change their life in a very specific, quick way, what would you tell them?
I love the question. It's something I think about a lot, Kelly. I think so often we're living in this very tactic-driven world. I think people are really just sort of reaching out to try to find the fix here and the fix there. And what does this successful person do? Or what does that great athlete do? And how can I emulate that? And I think that just right off the beginning puts us on the wrong track. I think any time that we want to make a profound change in our lives or get unstuck, I think that what we have to do first, the very first thing is just to start by turning the mirror back on ourselves. What are the really small things that we can do to self-invest in ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, just a little bit every day, and build that as a habit. And I think once you do that, you just begin to see bigger and bigger things down the line begin to open up. You see changes in disposition, and soon enough, you'll see that almost by default, you start making bigger changes in your health in all of these important categories, and they ultimately affect the more tactical things that you want to do, but you're much more prepared to gain ground tactically and strategically and conceptually.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, and I have to tell y'all, I actually had the opportunity to coach with Joe, and he's a brilliant coach, and he also taught me this, and I'm still learning it, right? Like it's one of those things that I keep coming back to going, oh, yeah, right? Think about what Joe told me and, bring it back in. You don't have to learn all the new gigas. You just need to start within. And like you said, turn the mirror on yourself, right? So you have been, you're kind of a busy guy. You're always up to something. So tell me what you've been up to lately, because you've been doing some pretty cool things.
I think one of the more interesting things that I have been up to lately is that I recently ran my first Boston Marathon.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It was my 11th marathon, but my first Boston Marathon. And I have to tell you, there is nothing like the Boston Marathon. I think number one, just that the spirit of the spectators from the start line, 26.2 miles later, there is spectators just 5-10 deep. The entire 26.2 miles are the most amazing marathon crowd I've ever witnessed. They are so engaged, the spirit of the people, they're so happy and so supportive. That was one big impression. And secondly, the course, the Boston Marathon route is really hard. The first 10 kilometers of the race are downhill, and you would think, oh, well, that must be a nice start. And so psychologically, you think it's going really well, and you have all these good times, and you feel great. And then you do a personal best on the first half, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm in big trouble on the second half. And I'm telling you, if it weren't for the fact that I live in some of the steepest terrain in the Pyrenees Mountains, like I would have been in really big trouble on the second half of the Boston Marathon. But luckily, it worked out well. It worked out. My legs held up, and I'm just amazed by the stories. And I'll just frame it this way: the Boston Marathon is not a loop. It starts 26.2 miles away from Boston, and it just comes into Boston on a straight line. That means that the marathon organizers have to bus 30,000 runners out to the start line. And I just started doing, I forget what they came to, doing the math, but if you just like 40 people per bus, it's so many bus loads of people just over and over and over again. And then just on my bus, so 40 people, just 40 amazing journeys to the Boston Marathon start line, and just listening to people talk to each other on that bus ride about overcoming injury or overcoming cancer or leading a training group, and just it's just person after person. Everyone has a story about getting to the start line just to qualify. And it's just a beautiful experience. So that's what I would say,
My
since we
goodness.
last talked, that was a nice experience to share with
Yeah.
people.
That gives me chill bumps. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great one. And you've been doing some training of athletes too, haven't you?
Yeah, I will say, I think one of the things that I love about my Five with Joe performance coaching program. So my performance coaching practice focuses on business leaders and executives and their senior leadership teams. That's kind of the main focus. But almost all of the concepts that I coach were concepts that I used as an Olympic gold medal winning athlete in whitewater canoeing. So I take these practices and concepts from navigating whitewater, complex rivers and river currents to kind of navigate the complex and tricky landscapes of business and life. But look, I won the Olympics a long time ago. And the fact is that these younger athletes have, to say they've refined the technique and the competitive strategies is a huge understatement. So I wanted to coach these athletes. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to see what it takes to be the very best canoeist in the world. And I live in a different country. I live in the Spanish state of Catalonia, and I work with Spanish and Andorran athletes. I coach in a different language, which kind of gives, I know what athletes in the United States are doing. I can talk about that until the cows come home. And now I get to add in this very interesting kind of a philosophy and mentality of how the best athletes in Europe do it. And I love incorporating this into my coaching and talking about the different athletes. Like on LinkedIn, like there's a lot of people who are following Julia Cucci now, who's one of the top Spanish kayakers. She's one of my athletes that I work with. You can just read the comments in LinkedIn and in my posts, and everyone has ideas and they're relating to how Julia's paddling. And here's this 24-year-old Spanish athlete from Fraga, Spain, that has kind of just developed her own personality and relatability on LinkedIn through our work together. That's what my Five with Joe coaching is all about. It's relating what the very best athletes are doing and transferring that to how can we help people to slow down, kind of get out of the rush of life, make a plan, figure out what matters most, respond well to uncertainty, and ultimately win at the things that are most important to them.
Yeah, I love that. And responding well to uncertainty. That's like such a big piece because people want certainty, right? And
and it's not a real chase. I mean, I think I think about this a lot. I know that anytime that the athletes that I work with are thinking about the finish line and how it's going to feel to cross the finish line, what I know is that is not energy being spent on the performance of competing or the performance of doing the practice. And to transfer that to business and life, it's like, even if you have a financial goal or you want to have a house on top of the mountain or on the beach, or those are nice things. And I think there's a place for them in goal setting. But the problem is if you don't let go of those goals, that you are holding on to real energy about something you can't affect right now. But if you really want to get to those places and achieve those things, the more of your 100% capacity that you can put into the performance of just doing the basics every day, that's going to move the needle much more than, vision boards and repeating mantras and things like that. Those things just really distract us from the basic practice, the small steps forward that we need to take every day just to kind of improve and kind of figure out what the small wins are.
so it's more of detaching, right, from the outcome, being okay with the outcome, but detaching.
Yes, it is. I always say that if you have something that is really important to you and you kind of let go of it, so to speak, believe me, you didn't really let go of it. It exists inside of you. You made it a priority. So the thing is just to understand that that's the sort of the trust you have to have with your inner self. And that's why I think some of these self-investment practices and even kind of working with things like working on your creative disposition or working with practices like meditation or yoga, that you begin to kind of think about your thoughts and your ideas and mindfulness and really where they go when you let them go. Because you're not really saying, oh, that house on the beach isn't important. Believe me, if it is, it's inside of you. But the best way to get there is not to be thinking about how good that house on the beach is going to feel when you get there. Yeah. It's the more of yourself you can put into the endeavors that matter, and the more that you can break those down into just these very repeatable cycles, that if I do A and then B and then C and then D and then E and then F every day, and you prioritize those and you make them habits, that the more energy that goes into that cycle, that's where mastery comes from. Not by trying to master a skill, but by just being fascinated about learning and trying to do those skills a little bit better. And it's then those external things begin to show up in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a brilliant way of saying it. Thank you.
Well,
because I do know.
I like the way you said it, just that detaching. I think it's really important. I think having the trust to detach and that willingness to experiment. And by the way, if you want to try it out, don't detach from this big dream that you have. Find something really small to detach from as a small experiment. I think one of the things I always try to do with athletes and clients is try to figure out what are the smallest possible steps that we can take. So if you're in a job that you don't like right now and you have a dream to sort of run your own business, don't quit the job and start the business, but let's just find like the smallest possible step and a couple of just actions we can take every day. Actions so small that if you didn't tell anyone else, they wouldn't know that you were even experimenting with these actions. Those are the kind of things that really move the needles if you're consistent about doing these small steps every day.
So it's building that muscle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So have you read a book called Awareness?
No, but it sounds like I should.
It's old. It's an old book, but I've been reading it. And it was funny because when I first picked it up, I thought, oh, know it, right? Know it. Yeah. Put it down. And I was like, wait a second. It's the things you think you know that you don't know, right?
Look, it's like I talk about awareness and presence and all the time. I'm not talking about it in a way that suggests I'm good at it. I think I've always told people, I suggest that the meditation practice that I do every day almost lets me know that I'm not very good at it.
Right.
But the value is not good or bad. The value is sitting for a few minutes every day. The value is just when my monkey brain is just kind of off in left field, for those moments that I say, oh, I can come back to the breath. That's the win. And it's not judging anything. It's just observing and noticing. And in that same way, I think people are really interested in kind of what are the unique conversations that I have with elite athletes before their biggest races of the year, before their biggest competitions of the year. And one of the things that the athletes always want to work on with me is they want to work on their disposition on the start line. But you have to understand, a lot of these athletes are in their early 20s, and many of them have this idea that there's a right way to be on the start line, that a good way or a bad way. And I said, look, the moment you decide there's a good way and a bad way, you're judging yourself against a standard that I don't believe exists. If we can somehow shift your disposition from judging whether it's good or bad and just noticing what it is, observing what it is, believe me, if your kind of mindset is in a place that's not focused, you've already done the work. You're still capable of going out and having a great run if you practice like this. Things are not different because it's the day of the World Championships. Yeah. Things are only different if you didn't practice this every day during the training year.
Right. So every day is practice.
And it
And every
is.
day is the race, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what you're practicing for. And so the one of the biggest things that I work on with athletes that have a very clear vision of wanting to be the best in the world at what they do, being is more gentle on themselves is probably the biggest thing. And the start line of that is how they rate themselves on the start line. They all feel they need to be more of X, or they need to be less of Y. And I just start right there, and it's like, oh my gosh, you've just sort of set such an unrealistic standard. You're really going to leave it to the brain to kind of show up and be the right way. I just think it's really important to hear that I've seen really mentally prepared and stable athletes in the start line of the Olympics go out and have bad races. I've also seen on the start line of the Olympic Games people who were completely scattered on the start line and won Olympic medals. So I think it's a matter of how you practice, and it's not about being confident on the start line. It's about having courage on the start line, and the courage just to observe and notice and trust that if you've done the work, if you've practiced a certain way, that it doesn't change because it's the Olympic Games. It's actually it's just a little bit more special because it's, you've practiced it a certain way, and you realize it, and then you have a whole different set of emotions in the start line. You're never thinking about the finish. You're just very present in the moment and grateful for everything that got you there.
Wow. Well, thank you. That was nice.
Oh,
So
cool.
tell me, what's next for you?
Well, as we record this, we're getting ready for an exciting summer here in La Seu d'Urgell, where we live, right next to the 92 Olympic whitewater course. We're going to host the World Championships here in September, and everything from getting to spend time with all the different athletes and teams that will be here training throughout the summer, to getting to work with some of the athletes. I'm going to do some announcing. I'll be the English speaking announcer during the World Championships next September. So I'm excited about that. And right now I'm putting a lot of time just into developing my 5 with Joe performance coaching practice. The more that I stick around and do the work and kind of have the experiences with the athletes and clients that I have, I just believe more and more that there's just something here for people. I know that I don't make any big promises to people. I don't say double this and half that. I go the opposite way. I mean, but this stuff, it takes patience. It takes long game, but I've figured out a lot of good things about really healthy performance cycles and providing the right kind of accountability for people to do that. And so I would just want to focus more on building not a large practice, but just a better practice. That's all. I love being a solopreneur. I don't have any, I say 5 with Joe because when you recall, you're not getting a certified coach, or you're not getting someone who learned a program. You just get me. I answer the phone. I mean, and I do all the work, and I like it that way. And I just want to continue to just sort of deepen what I do, add more value, and just make that difference, and then let the people who are involved kind of move on and do their work. And the whole idea is that it's not about me keeping clients. The idea is about getting people out into the world to go do what they were meant to do. And it just seems to work out well. And I just want to do more of that and on a deeper level.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'll link to 5 with Joe in the comments for sure. You're on the website, but we'll relink on there too, because everyone should connect with Joe. Like he said, like when you connect with Joe, you're connecting with Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I sort of look around and I kind of see what else is out there, and I know what people's aspirations are. I love helping people that want to grow beyond being a solopreneur. And I have experience doing that, having been the CEO of an Olympic sport. But for what I do, it is, I know what I like to do and what I'm good at doing. And I think the most help I can be of people is to stay small. And if that ever changes, then I would have to kind of change the name of Five with Joe. So, but for now, no, you really get Joe.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a wonderful conversation, as always.